Zebro. Good morning.
Good morning, Allison.
I know, thank you. And it's such a joy to have you here in the conversation with us around thinking about body awareness. And I just want to get a little bit of background as to who you are and how you connected with Bena.
Sure. Well, I was born in Davenport, Iowa, on a farm. It's a true story, actually. But then I grew up, bit by bit, with Bena's help, obviously. We started working together about 20 years ago, actually. I was just graduating chiropractic school, and I had a background as a strength and conditioning coach. So I had this approach of movement, which was really about keeping people pain-free and really helping them help themselves through body awareness. These are all terms I didn't know at the time, but by working with Bena, she started getting me to think about my thinking, and then we said, well, we're kind of thinking about our moving, and there were always lots of questions. Then, why am I doing this? What is this? How's this going to help me? How do I explain this to other people? Do I really have to do this? And the answers to those
And
are
it was also effortless.
right. You already told them the secret to that. Yeah. Well, you're using strong words. It's a little early for that, but yes, all true. So we work together very collectively. It was the first time I realized that with all of my clients and patients, I was really 51% of the vote. In this, it was an even 50-50 split. But it was very much about giving Bena the tools to be able to put her body back together after we worked together, in addition to just being aware of her movements and where she was in time and space while we were working together. So I started a clinic in Westport, Connecticut, which has become a holistic gym, a term that I didn't know that's what I was creating when I was doing it. But we have movement-based therapists and trainers, and then I do hands-on manual therapy to get people's body ready for the movement. And Bena and I have been together 2 times a week ever since. And I think that's our story. Fair?
Yeah, fair. But I thought maybe we would want to talk a little bit about how we came to the habits of movement and the habits of mind. So maybe just as a part of the introduction, you all have in your folder this, and you may have wondered what it was. And this was the big reveal today. We're going to talk a little bit about it.
And it may be helpful for you to also bust out the habits of mind table so that you can start to see the connections in the conversation as part of that. So again, just make sure that you all have a copy. If you don't have a copy, you misplaced your folder, Pat and Juanita are over there and they're more than happy to give you an additional copy. But it's helpful for you to ground yourself in that. It's also in the folder for the day 2 keynote.
So when EJ was saying that I was always asking, part of what I was concerned with was I needed to have a mental image of what we were doing so that I had a metacognitive coaching in my head. Because one of the things that he kept telling me was, I can do this now with you, but if you don't bring it out into your life, then it will always remain when I'm with you in the gym. And the philosophy was, I want to make you as functional as possible in your life. You might want to think about that.
You might want to think about that. Yeah. And you came back to me years ago and said that my voice was still in your head, and not in the ways that I would normally think about working with patients and clients of how to move to get out of the chair if there's an acute back pain. But you were saying when you're walking outside in nature and to keep your chest up and to look around and to pause before you moved. These cues that I didn't really realize were being transmitted to my clients. So that feedback transformed my approach, and instead of being a traditional coach of how to do something, how it was being carried out into the real world. And then we kind of translated that as Tap Strength, the name of the business, and the work that we do and the intention that we do in the gym of tapping in. And then as you get out, you can tap out and things become more of a flow state. All the work that you've done in the gym to create new neural budding and neural pathways then become more unconscious, and you can tap out and just flow and be and stand and have amazing posture and strength and movement as Bena does.
So just as an example, so that you get a feel for it, what happens, so when you do the habits of movement, this isn't necessarily a sequence, but I remember when you said something to me about, I think you're going to need to do a deeper hip stretch right now. It's easy, I sometimes come in saying, I don't know how many of you will know this expression, but it's the latest kvetch, which is, I come in and I say, so I think I twisted my hip a little bit. And he goes, okay, so let me just see what's going on. And we go out on the floor, and then you'll tell me, let's work on elasticity to get your hip to be a little bit more able to move the way you want it to move. So you talk about elasticity, and then I'll talk about the habits of mind that went in my head.
Okay. Well, I guess the quick backstory is sometimes I can be a little stubborn. Fair.
So can I.
True. That's why we're a good pair. So for years, I was charged with creating a methodology, an approach to what I was doing, and it was very individual. I didn't understand how to create an approach when it was very much about listening to what the person was presenting and giving them tools that they could individualize to accomplish whatever they needed. And then I started thinking, well, how good is that if we're trying to educate more people and give them a lower cost, high volume way to achieve these goals? So how can we kind of create really like silos of different movement patterns to achieve different goals? And as Ben said, it's not if this, then that, from the beginning of persisting in balance and going through everything, and then all of a sudden you've got this amazing physique, an amazing way to move that's going to last you a lifetime. It's really about teaching you, if you feel this, what are some strategies that you can do to move and feel a little bit better? And it's all about getting back to your baseline, to your own body awareness. What does it feel good on a regular basis? What is that baseline that you can then move from? And more importantly, when you don't feel well, when you're pulled out of that with pain or limitations, how do you get back?
So EJ, as you're starting to chat about this in a moment with Bena, can we take a pause and do a prompting question for everyone in the room based on what you're starting to describe right now, tuning into how you're feeling?
Sure. Great. So I'd like to give real world examples. So one way to do that was, first thing, I got up this morning at 5:15 and I sat up and said, okay, what do I need right now? What do I feel? And my bed last night was amazing because it started here and it finished about down here when I lied into it. It was about a 4-foot drop of softness, which I'm not really used to. So when I sat up, things hurt. My back kind of hurt, my neck kind of hurt. So instead of saying, okay, so how do I stretch that? How do I fix that? This is what I did. And we can all kind of do this together. And it's not going to be
This is going to be a joint enterprise right now. So we're behaving like EJ right now.
Remind you, it's 5:15 in the morning. There's not a lot going on, right? It's pretty dark. There's no lights on. So I just kind of sat at the edge of the bed and I took stock. So, and for me, taking stock in my body, I started eyes closed. Wasn't hard to do. It was very dark, but we can close our eyes if we want to now, or leave them open. And I close mine. So sitting at the edge of the bed, 5:15 in the morning, things are a little tight. I start with a deep breath in, and I do that through my nose, if at all humanly possible. So it's about 5 seconds of the deep inhale through my nose. I hold on to that for about 1 second, and it's a slow, steady exhale. And when I do that, 5:15 in the morning, I say, you know what? My neck's not that bad. My back is actually still a little stiff. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting this information from my body in more of a relaxed state. Because I could have gotten up, jumped out of bed, and said, holy shit, I've got to go and talk in front of a bunch of people. My back hurts, my neck hurts. What am I going to do? And I start freaking out. And I immediately start putting my body into more of a fight or flight state instead of a relaxed state. So what I'm trying to do, sitting on the edge of bed, keeping my body in a relaxed state, slowing my rate of thinking and breathing, and pun intended, tapping into what do I need and where do I need it. So I'm going to do that again. It's a slow, steady, deep inhale through my nose, about 5 seconds in, a slow, steady exhale out through my nose, and now I reassess. Okay, my back is still a little achy. What can I do in an easy way to alleviate this? So I'm going to demonstrate. You can join me if you want to. It starts just like this. I stand up out of bed, 5:15 in the morning. And mind you, what I want to do when I stand up out of bed at 5:15 in the morning with my achy back is get up and start going like this and make my way into the bathroom and like turn on some hot water. But instead, I stand up and I do that same thing. I take that deep breath in through the nose, hold on to it for 1 second, slow, steady exhale. Now what I've done is I got myself in an upright position. Bena knows as well. I'm looking for stability before mobility. I'm trying to find a nice neutral spine, standing up tall, getting air to the top of my lungs. And at the same time, I'm still assessing what's going on in my body, right? So I still feel that achiness. So in this good posture, I walk over to the window, I open the window, and what I can hear now, cars going by, air coming in. So instead of being stuck in my head, I now have the sensory input of sound happening on the outside. So I'm immediately less stressed. I'm more in tune with nature and surroundings. And I can feel that I'm a little bit chilly now that I'm cold, and my body is now reacting. And all of this takes me away from my pain and brings me back into my body. My back felt a little bit better. From there's the whole stretching thing we get into later, but that was just the first instance of me getting out of my head, going through some nasal breathing, which increases oxygen consumption, increases carbon dioxide reduction, and moving it out of my body, moving out of that waste, and getting on with my day. So
Now, before you sit down,
Mm.
I also would like you to say, okay, so when you said I stand up, I've done a little bit of work with EJ, so once in a while I fly in and I get to hang out with him. But you're specific in terms of when you stand up and when you sit down. So as we are about to sit down, do you want to give us a little direction?
yes, I do. So this is what I don't want to do in the morning, which is kind of what we all think we want to do, and I thought I wanted to do as well, is I get up, oh my God, my back hurts, and I'm gonna stretch it. So it's relatively fine if I do that and I stretch, but if I try to get up, that's when I can get into that oh shit pattern of like, oh my God, what just happened, right? So forward flexion, flexing the spine, tends to feel good and stretches out those tissues, but it also puts more stress on my spine and my discs. It can make it worse, not better, right? So it's not always a great idea. In fact, most low back pain happens with flexion and rotation. So it's kind of a bad idea, especially if I'm in pain. So what I want to do is I want to move in ways that I keep a neutral spine. So to do the same thing, I would have a wider stance. I would get into a squat position, and I could do that same move. Or if I wanted to be more advanced, I could kind of go into a squat, then into a flex, and then back to a squat and stand up, all ways that would protect my back instead of kind of picking a scab to feel better. So my number one student is going to demonstrate if, let's say, that the top of the seat of our chair is a heavy stack of books, and Bena is going to pick up those stack of books and lift them up and carry them. How would Bena do that? That's an excellent squat. And lift, you drop the books. Let's do it again. So deep squat and up, all the way up. All right, so let's do that again, Bena. That's good, but I didn't give you the cue yet. So we're gonna do it again, but I really want you to focus on your breathing as you do that. Oh, that's excellent. All right, 97 more times. So we're gonna have you all practice that. And when I want you to lift your books, your stack of books, so even if you're sitting, you're going to stand for this one. We're all going to get into a deep squat. We're going to lift our seats as if they're a stack of books, and I want you to think about breathing as you do that. So there's no right or wrong way to do this, but you do all need to lift your seats because there may be a surprise on the bottom of those seats for you that I'm saying. As you're doing that and you're squatting and you're lifting and maybe you're looking for something on the bottom of your seat and waving your hand if you see that.
A winner hello sticker.
That was a long way to go to get there, but we got there. I appreciate you all joining.
That wasn't just solely getting you to do our cockamamie raffle that we're trying to orchestrate for you. But it was also a way to continue to think about your own body awareness and then starting to couple it with movement. And, I think, EJ, that the powerful question that you started to clarify in the session is, what do I need right now? And so I think the idea is that sometimes we're thinking about this from like a physical movement. But as you continue to think about this as a holistic idea and starting to think about things like attuning to the outside world, sometimes it's really a question of this kind of whole body awareness scan that includes the physical, the mental, the emotional, so how all of that sort of crystallizes together. And I think it would be great as in our next part of the conversation to interact with the habits of mind more specifically. So to start to narrate that story again at 5:15 in the morning, because we're doing this not just to understand EJ's wake up routine, we're actually doing this to start to think about the implications it has as you start your day and as you're moving through your day in professional workspaces.
So one of the questions that I asked EJ in preparation for this, because one of the things that I've been concerned with is now that we have had this development of the habits of movement and the habits of mind, and I go to schools and see people are so stressed right now. And often their response to stress is what he said, which is the oh shit movement, instead of the movement that will actually center you and get you back in balance. So I said to him, EJ, I'm going to show you what I see typically, or what I do, or would have done typically before I started working with him. So I said, so I'm a teacher. I spend a lot of time coaching kids in this position. And he said, and then I stand up and my back hurts. And he said, well, what would you do? And I said, I'd go sit down. So tell me what I would do.
Well, first I want to say what great respect I have for anyone in education and teachers, and what I do working one-on-one or in small groups is challenging, but not nearly as challenging as working with larger groups. And I was a professional soccer coach, which just means I worked for an organization working with many little kids. So I had an understanding of what it's like to wrangle a bunch of little kids who aren't listening to you. And having a soccer ball made it somewhat easier, I feel like, because at least I could distract them by juggling a soccer ball and things like that. So there's no easy way to say this is a movement that you can do that's it's going to help you feel this way in this environment. But there's one thing, and we're going to keep going back to this, is what is my bridge between what I can consciously do and what's happening inside me on an unconscious basis, and that's my breath. And we can give you all these exercises that you can do to have amazing posture, but if you're not breathing, you're going to go back into this state of protection, of fight or flight. And the way that you can be relaxed and be more relaxed in front of a group of people that you don't know with your mentor sitting next to you is that you can start by giving yourself practices to relax yourself and not to go into the ruminations of fear and fight or flight around my back, which then leads into being self-aware in front of people and anxiety that may follow that. But how can I have these practices of relaxation? And how can I have more of a relationship with my breath? And how can I stay in connection with that relationship with my breath in front of people, in front of kids, while I'm speaking? Can I keep, I'm going to say it again, tapping into my breath through my movement and through my awareness?
So I think that what I'm learning all the time with him is the metacognition, the thinking about your thinking. Because the more you can talk to yourself about this, especially if you're a high verbal person, which I happen to be in case you hadn't noticed it, I talk to myself because that helps me to monitor myself. So I'm managing my impulsivity, because the impulse is go sit down, get the ache off your back, And he says no, because that's where you're going to get more atrophy of your muscles and less elasticity and less ability to manage this. So all of that is a conversation I have in my head in just a couple of seconds, because the first thing is I've got to stop and think before I act. And I think that that part is the stability before mobility. Just give yourself a moment to collect yourself and find your center.
I also think the connection to managing impulsivity is important here too, because one of the things that's classic that we have in reference to strategies for managing impulsivity is the importance of breathing. And DJ, can you talk a little bit more about breathing to center in terms of stability? So again, you mentioned one breathing pattern. Maybe perhaps we can test out another breathing pattern for another situation, or starting to think about the idea of what the breath is doing in relation to the physical body, because they're sort of continuing to create this synergy, especially with tuning into an external world as an influence.
Sure. Yeah, so the breath, of all the things that we have when we're working with people at TAP, we will tell them, you can do anything. If you twist your ankle, we can fix that. If your back tweaks, we have a remedy for that. Just don't stop breathing. We don't have a remedy for that, right? So highly important. There's a million ways to breathe. They're all beneficial, clearly. But what I find to be an added benefit is if we add some level of visualization to our breathing. So we're going to do another breathing technique. And in this case, you can breathe kind of any way that you want to. We do the nasal breathing. There was a great book by James Nestor called Breath. It's like 400 pages long, and the takeaway is breathe in and out through your nose. It's better than any other way. So you can skip reading the book. We get 80% more oxygen, and we can breathe out more carbon dioxide. It's better for your mouth structure, all these things. But try to breathe in and out of your nose if at all humanly possible. So we're going to go breathing any way we want to. Again, I always prefer breathing with the eyes closed, especially if we're visualizing and trying to visualize inside our body and what's going on there. And there's going to be some things that may sound a little bit like yoga and some things that may sound a little bit like sports visualization. It's just a combination of best practices for me. So here we go. I'm going to start with a slow, steady breath in. And for me, I've realized about 5 seconds is a nice amount of air that I can get in and hold on to, and then holding on for just a second or two before I slowly exhale that out again. So when we do that, and I start to take that breath in, air starts at the base of my lungs. So just breathe on your own as you're doing this while I'm talking. So if I breathe and air starting at the bottom of my lung, as I continue to breathe in, that air travels upward to the top of my lung. Now, this is an interesting part, because if I'm breathing in fully and air is getting all the way up to the top part of my lungs, it's very hard where I hold my anxiety to have both air and anxiety exist in the same space. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to breathe in that air all the way up to the top of my lungs. And at that point, I can visualize any stress, anxiety, or pressure that I'm feeling there dissipating, because there's not enough space for my air and my anxiety at the same time. And then when I exhale, I can do this little trick where I brace my abdominal muscles like someone's poking me and resisting as they're pushing to my abdominal muscles. So now I'm breathing in all the way up to the top of my lungs, which pushes my shoulders back, chest out, and gives me this nice neutral spine posture. And then as I exhale, I'm bracing my abdominal muscles like someone's pushing me and I'm resisting. So what I'm doing now is I'm building my endurance muscles, right? My endurance muscles around my spine, keeping them in a neutral spine position in a way that actually feels good, where I feel vulnerable in the sense that my heart is open, but also supported in the fact that I'm bringing air in. And now what I'm doing is I'm creating a circuit from my brain to my body of how I'm feeling. I feel strong. I feel empowered. I feel supported through this breath. And whatever those words are in how I'm feeling, I can go back to and keep this connection between brain and body of how I'm feeling based on how I'm breathing.
But I think the part not to forget is the heart. Because you usually, if you stand up and show us, if we open our palms, let's just do that one too, because I do think that that's really where we're actually opening ourselves up. And by doing this, we're opening our hearts up, we're opening our minds up, we're opening ourselves up to each other. And I think that that's a very important one as well.
And this is also connected, like sometimes you can think about yoga and mountain pose. Is anybody doing at least a tiny bit of yoga? Yeah, so the notion of starting to incorporate the things that you're already comfortable or familiar with, the idea of that kind of posture, the opportunities, like it starts in your feet as well. I mean, I think that's another interesting part. So can you stand up with us? So the notion is that before you are starting to go right to breath, you're conscious of how you're standing, and then you're sort of on your feet, starting to think about like how your feet are on the ground when you feel contact with the ground. And then starting to travel up your body as part of the breathing pattern. Because I think on some level, it's not just okay, we're done. You know what I mean? So really trying to tune into that kind of awareness. And Bena, can you talk a little bit about the habits of mind that are part of that process? You did talk about metacognition a little bit, but are there other habits as we're starting to sort of continue to center ourselves, starting from the ground up, that really help you to continue with your daily experience?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really, there's like not one habit, but I do find for myself, as I said, managing impulsivity is very important for me because I'm not as young as I used to be. And I always had the habit of jumping right up and getting started with something. So the first thing I have to do is listen to what he says about stability before mobility. That to me has been a very big thing, those words. The other words that I always hear from him are chin up, chest up, which reminds me that I am fighting gravity the older I get. And so the more I'm fighting gravity, the more I'm inclined to allow myself to slump. Chin up, head up, and then immediately when I change from here to here, I've already opened my heart up as well. And that's all about striving for accuracy for me, because I do pay close attention to what he said, because I'm very quick to want to move on to the next thing. So I have to slow myself up. And I'm finding the striving for accuracy is coaching myself to do what he's actually teaching me to do instead of doing, okay, I did it.
So if we can actually have EJ take us through a sequence, you're going to sort of attune to your body based on what EJ's directing you to. So like the idea of where your hands are and that kind of thing. And then after the couple of sequences, tune into what habit you're experiencing as part of that exercise. So we're all ready to rock and roll. All right, here we go, EJ.
Okay. All right. So when I started this a long time ago, it was very much a biomechanical approach. The thought of like standing here in front of a group of people and talking about heart space and heart space opening was not my jam. I was a collegiate soccer player. I was not really into the spirituality of all of this, which is kind of a joke because we're living on this world. The fact that we're here is all very spiritual. Things have changed. But I still maintain more of a biomechanical approach to all of these things while doing a bunch of yoga, being yoga certified. So that's a little bit more of my story. But when we think about this position, mountain pose and yoga, this is our anatomical position, right? This is how we're supposed to stand when gravity, life, and stress in relationships aren't taking us in this direction, right? And then we go from this direction to this direction because we're pretty pissed off, and then that doesn't feel good, and we go back in this position. So it's not really realistic to think that we can flow around through life like this, but we can get back to this state. And if we have practices that allow us to form these habits to come back to the state, we can get back here more easily, right? So that's the goal, to get back here more easily. So here we go. Again, I like to have my eyes closed when I do this, but you can have your eyes open and you can have them open and closed, not at the same time. Well, I guess you could, but I can't really do that. Anyway, right. I can't blink. Anyway, we'll get back to that. So here we are. We're standing. Our palms are forward. Our chest is out. Our feet are in a comfortable position. You can kind of just pick those feet up and kind of put them down and just see where they land. And we're going to take kind of a somatic approach of bottom up. So we're looking and feeling the bottom of our feet. And we're going to start there, right? So as I'm breathing in whatever kind of rate and pace through the nose, through the mouth, whatever's comfortable for you, you're You're breathing slowly in, slowly out, and thinking about the arches of my feet. And I'm thinking about on both sides, left and right, where do I feel that pressure? Is it back on my heels? Is it more on the ball of my foot? Can I take that pressure and that energy and can I put it evenly through both of my feet? So I'm really feeling grounded into the earth. And can I feel that energy start to come up the back of my legs? Can I put that energy come through my breath into my calves? And now can I feel that the arch of my foot actually being connected to my calf? And then what happens then? Does that energy and that connection, can it travel up further up the back of my leg, my posterior chain, right? That fascial connection, right? Me going back to my biomechanical state, but can I get out of that way of thinking and just think about energy? And that energy goes up now into my glutes, right? My posterior. Maybe even I can squeeze those glutes a little bit and push those feet further into the ground. So now I feel deeper energy going from my waist all the way down to the ground, and from the ground all the way back up. Now that I have that connection, can I feel my abdominal muscles brace? Again, thinking that someone's poking me in the stomach and I'm resisting, or maybe I'm even tapping myself in the stomach, right? So I can engage and activate those muscles. All the while, I'm still breathing, right? And can I go down further, right? So now it's arch of foot, calf, hamstrings, into those glutes, into my abdominal muscles. And now can I get up into that heart space and take a deep, full, the deepest breath that I've taken today? Can I take that all the way into my heart and my lungs and expand all of that? And then exhale that all the way down through my feet. And then if I do that again, starting at my feet and I breathe all the way in, can I bring that air all the way up and out through the top of my head? And then exhale that all the way down through my feet, making that fully connected. Let's try that a couple times now. Full deep inhale all the way up, out through my head, and then exhaling down, bracing, engaging all the way down to the ground. One more time. Deep, full inhale up and out, and exhaling, bracing, grounding all the way down to the ground. Now 10 jumping jacks. Just kidding.
Okay, so take a moment and think about what habit of mind were you tuning into. So can you, if you need the prompt at the table, that's great. Think about the habit that you were tuning into and then mutter with the person next to you. Just put that together. Yeah. So as we're rounding out the keynote, the opportunity of continuing to think about the impact it has, not just on how you're settling in, how you're tuning into body awareness, but also the last comment or two. I'd love to talk a little bit around the idea of heart space. And so the notion of physical heart space, so the body mechanics of opening up your heart based on the exercise we just ran through. But also, how does that truly connect with habits of mind? So if both you and Bena can chat about that as our
Maybe I can just start by saying that one of the things that we found together, because we've grown together, as I said, we've aged together. He's a little slower than I am. But anyway, is listening with understanding and empathy. The idea of opening the heart space, especially when you're listening to something you don't want to hear. And that means somebody who differs from your perspective, somebody who you really are feeling aggravated with, somebody who you're really saying, I really don't want to respond to this in a way that really communicates. some of what's going on in the chatter in my head, which is, damn. So how do you do that? Well, the breathing has always helped me. It's like you don't have to respond immediately. There's something called silence. And that's a kind of surprising moment when you find out that silence isn't just about keeping your mouth shut. It's about also doing this breathing that brings you back to your center. And that was a big understanding for me of the idea of opening your heart, being able to be more empathic, being able to just wait a moment before you answer. It's more than managing impulsivity. It's really about that opening yourself up to what someone else is saying. And I think you heard me say yesterday in the keynote, the beautiful thing that I learned from Monica Guzman. I never really thought of it that way. So it's like really realizing somebody is saying something to you, and rather than jumping into debate, breathing, opening yourself up and saying, I never really thought of it that way. That's something new to me.
I like the idea of relationships. And if I go into a conversation with a loved one, a client, and I'm carrying over the last conversation that we had and the way that they made me feel, I'm immediately going into that with my heart in, let's just say, a protected way, or maybe resentful, or maybe still angry based on what they said. And what I realized as we've aged together is that in order to come back from adversity or difficult situations, I need to care for myself. I need to, if I want to bounce back from that difficult situation, I need to do some work. So when I spoke to the NFL strength conditioning coaches at the NFL Combine, I was amazed to see that they were so open to injury prevention. And research shows that if you go into a sporting event and you have limited range of motion and you have stiffness from a very difficult workout the day before, you're more prone to injury. So there's foam rolling techniques and where you can put your body back together so that you're not going into a limited and restricted way. It's the same thing with your heart. If I go into a relationship the next day and I haven't done some work on myself to figure out why I felt the way that I did, what was it about me in my past? What are the different sensory experiences and life experience that I had that made me feel that way? If I don't do some sort of introspection, then I'm going to go back and I'll have that same kind of closed heart in order to protect myself. But if I can do a little work, if I can recover and then grow from those instances, I can go back and now be attuned and be in a better place because of that growth mindset that I'm taking as a way to repair my body.
It's also interesting, I mean, as Bena was saying, if I'm listening to something that I don't want to hear, it doesn't feel good. It's another interesting dynamic because I was thinking about this as a self-awareness. Sometimes I'm going back to your 5:15 in the morning thing. It's like, I don't feel good. Like my back isn't what it used to be. Does anybody have that feeling? Like it's for me, it's my knees. You know what I mean? Like I can kneel down when I'm like talking to somebody and then I'm like, oh my God, I can't stay in this position. And again, it's like the idea of trying to think about what you used to be able to do, like biomechanically, the opportunity of tuning into your level of stress. And I think that's another interesting part. You know when you are overworked, overtaxed, and that simple question of what do I really need right now, centered around some of the breathing techniques, that to me continues to help with opening your heart space up, not just in your own body, but also making it so that you're more available in relationships with your children, your students, your faculty, et cetera.
I was really intrigued because now that I'm so aware, and we've been working on this for a couple of years, so I'm much more aware of all the things that we do as teachers, where if we can apply some of this, because we know now the habits of mind, but we have to also tie it to the habits of movement. Like as I was listening to EJ, and I'm sure you were too, it was like, okay, he was gathering data through all the senses. He was applying past knowledge from new situations. And that's what he was doing. If I understand that that's the thinking that I'm capable of, then I'm capable of thinking my way through the kinds of movements I need to do to find my center in a way that there's this beautiful marriage of balance and understanding. Otherwise, I'm thinking that it's so compartmentalized that I may do the movement without the metacognitive process, and I may not realize what I've done, and it will be gone because it will be an event. It won't be a habit.
So just as a gift to everyone in the room, we will edit the video of some of the breathing experiences that you engaged in real time because your eyes were closed. So we'll make sure that you'll have those moments. And again, it's an opportunity for you to play, to practice, and start to tune in to what do you really need right now. Some of what you really need right now is to stand up and have some water, go to the restroom, what have you. We are going to take our break in a moment. I just want to also get you clarification that on this side of the room in the next session, Bena and EJ will continue to do some practical applications. So it's the idea that you might, again, be ready to move in terms of taking some direction in relation to that. The other thing too is if you were a winner, you had your winner sticker on, to the front of the room right now, and so we can give you your gift. And again, we are also just thrilled that Dan Molrath had an opportunity to have his publisher send 2 copies of his beautiful brand new book, The Purpose Driven Classroom. So again, he's going to be running a session on that, as well as thank you to Solution Tree for giving us a couple copies.
And you'll sign them, won't you, Dan?
Absolutely, yes.
And we have a few others.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, one of the chapters is very similar to what you just discussed. It did a lot of breathing techniques, self-control and strategies. So it's very connected, just coincidentally, you're talking about it. So a lot of it's there for right there in the classroom.
Fantastic. So I do know that we have to also deal with the lasers, but if we can have the winners come up first, and then we'll make sure that we are bracing ourselves on the sides of the room, and you're making your choices into your session 4 experience. Thank you.